Hello, going live. Oh, let's just pop that down a bit because I'm sat a bit further back today. Hello. Actually, it hasn't been that long. It's been a couple of days since I was last able to do this. And yeah, if you've been following the podcast, you'll know that I did get a bit of work done whilst I was away. You'll also know that I had an interesting few days, but won't go into that now. So I've been working on chapters 27, 28 and 29 of Empress of the Trees, but we'll talk about that in a minute because there's a couple of things I want to talk about first. Let me just see if I can send a test message. So there we go. Make sure that the chat thing is working. Yeah, that's good. Let's do the usual sort of basic stuff first. So you will see there a QR code. That QR code links to all of my social media, which is pretty much all of them. I don't think I have Snapchat on there, but most of the rest. I do have TikTok, but I rarely use it because I don't get the people looking at it, so I don't see the point. But one of the things on there is my Discord server. So if at some point during this lovely live stream you want to come and talk to me, you can. Now the Discord server, at the bottom of my server there is a section called voice channels, and there is one open, well there's one called Twitch Streams Live, which when you heard that noise was open, which means basically you can go into that stream and talk to me. The downside is your voice will appear on this, so only do if you actually are happy for that to be the case. So what I'm going to talk about for my preamble. So my preamble is I'd like to talk about not a TV show, a radio comedy. Hello, Bow Street Society. I'd like to briefly talk about a Radio 4 comedy show that has been going for a really long time and I've only just discovered it. Now, it's called It's a Fair Cop. And basically it's an ex-sergeant from the Humberside Police. And what he does is he just talks through real things that have happened to him in his job. He lets the audience, he gets the audience involved and says, so my options at this point were this, this and this. What would you have done? He gets a bit of an audience, tests the water and finds out why. And he's quite funny, so the way he does it is always really amusing. And then he tells you what he actually did. So he doesn't it's not like a choose your own adventure type thing. He actually tells you what he did. And it's both informative and funny. So, for example, there was one of the very early episodes. He's talking about. I did get an image off the BBC website. Let me just work out how to put it on the screen. There we go. So he did there's an episode where he's talking about. Be right back. Okay, no worries. I'm going to talk about this later, actually. I'm going to talk about this when Bow Street Society comes back, because I think she might like this. So I will go back to what I was doing before. Well, I'll talk about my second... Oh, wrong button. So instead, I'm going to talk a little bit about my... Oh, there you go. My other obsession. So... people who... why does it do that? It's doing that? That's bizarre. Why is it doing that? That's better. So it's doing... so I've been collecting space Lego. And basically this is a gorgeous book that has basically all the space Lego sets, and it breaks them down into the different eras. So classic space Lego 78 to 87, Futuron and Blacktron 87 to 90, Space Police Mtron and so on. Now this era here, chapter 1, classic space Lego, was the stuff I was into as a kid. And it's got basically details of every single set that was ever produced in this range. In the order, with a bit of interesting information. Well, interesting to a saddo like me anyway. So I'm going to spin through all that. So that, apparently, was the very first set. Now, I definitely had that one. In fact, I have it now, because what I've been doing is I've been using this book to help me regain them. Then there was this one, which is the mobile ground tracking station. I don't know what's called tracking station. It's like a... Oh, no. The Grand Tracker Station was that one, sorry, which I also have. Very rare, that one, very expensive now. Then again, this is quite a bad picture because it makes it look like the spaceship is part of the set, but it's not. But that's the set, basically. That was very expensive for the one set. Then you get onto the spaceships. And yeah, so I love all this stuff. That is my favourite set as a kid. I absolutely love it. And I do. And weirdly, they've re-released that one as a more up-to-date kind of version. So yeah, I love it. So all of these old sets that are listed here. So it tells you a bit of information. So it tells you when it was released, how many bricks or elements there were in the set, how many unique elements, which I think is stuff that was made specially, appeared on that set for the first time, and how many minifigures you get with it. So there's the rocket launch pad and so on. I do distinctly remember that box as a kid. And you got some of the little ones. I remember that one. I mean, that was probably 99p. I wish I'd paid 99p to get it this time round. So that one's... I actually had two of those when I was a kid, because I got one for my birthday, and then my aunt bought it for Christmas for me as well. That one. So we're getting to the first one that was I'd never even seen. So with the exception of one of the earlier sets, I did have them all as a kid. But this one I'd never even heard of. And I don't actually like it particularly because it looks a bit unwieldy and strange. And it's also got green glass on the windows instead of the yellow like the other ones of the era have. But I've now got it. This I absolutely love, the mobile command base. I think it's a terrific set. It's a shame my phone can't get any closer to focus in. But yeah, it's a cracking set. So basically, I've been buying all of these sets. That was another one that I'd never even heard of. I think it was, I don't know where it came from. I don't know if it was released in this country. But all of these are ones that I now own. We're now getting in the book to the ones that I never had as a kid, like that one I never had. I did have that though. I love that. That was my second favourite spaceship after the one I showed you earlier. There's a great picture of there. So this is just a lovely book, and as I say, I have. That's another set that I never heard of as a kid, but I do have now. So all of these are now ones that I've managed to find second hand. That one was expensive, but I got one in decent condition, because you can get them cheap, but there'll be bits missing or substitute pieces, and I'm not into that. Now this intergalactic command base is a hybrid of other sets. It seems to have the rocket launcher and the little spaceshipy thing, and so that's good. And all of these, we're now into ones that I definitely didn't own as a kid, but I do now. What year are we into? 1984. So even by 1984, when I was 12, I was kind of growing out of it. So we're now into, all this. I love some of these little ones. Again, they were probably 199p or 199 when they were first released. Such simple little models. Or that one. And you just think, oh my god, if only they were 99p now, as I've said before. So yeah, so I've got basically everything on these. Oh, hang on, we have a problem, Houston. Not quite sure why that froze on me. Sorry. But yeah, so basically I've got. That seems to have. I'm sure it'll give me the option to come back. But yeah. It's not doing it now. I'll have to hold it up. So the first one that I haven't got in this book, so I've got all the stuff on this side. First one I haven't got, well, I've ordered it now, is that one. And then there's a couple more in here that I've ordered because, well, basically I'm going to own them all. That's the thing. I am going to own them all. I'm definitely going to own all of the ones in the classic range up to 1987. And then I haven't decided what I'm going to do beyond that. So the stuff we're looking at in the second phase is like that kind of stuff. But the one that I really, really like the look of, I don't like the look of the Spacemen. So they've redesigned the minifigures a little bit, and I don't like that look as much. And they've also introduced bad guys into it, and I'm not sure I like them. But then some of the bad guys' bases look quite good. And then the one that I am going to buy, even though I'm not sure, this is that's making me think I ought to continue into the second phase, because the models look like the same kind of things I like. The spaceships look spaceshipy and a bit like the ones in... The only real difference is the minifigures. They could be part of the same range. They've all got the classic space Lego look, and they use a lot of the same parts. But this is the one I want. And this is going to cost me a lot of money, the monorail set. And you can actually get a track extension kit, which I'm going to get as well. Anyway, you don't need to know about how I waste my money. But no, I'm loving collecting these, I really am. It's giving me a lot of joy. Right, on to the writing. So, I've opened all my windows because it was a bit warm earlier. And now it looks like it might rain, which would be a little bit annoying because I've got some clothes I want to dry. Hang on, let me just have a look at the weather forecast. There's nothing outside yet, so I haven't got to dash out. But I might close the door. Oh no. Oh, possibility of light rain in the next hour, but after that, the sun will come out. Oh, that's good. That's good. I should do that. Right. So, what I'm going to do, as I say, there's a tiny chance that Bow Street Society, who was watching this but has gone and answered a phone call, there's a slight chance she'll be interested in the Radio 4 comedy I was talking about, so I shall wait until she's back to talk about that. And instead, in the meantime, what's it doing? I didn't do that. I must have done something by mistake. Sorry. So, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do my paper edit of chapter 27 of Empress of the Trees. So let me put this view on so you can see what I'm doing. I'm drinking a nice cup of coffee as we go. It is a nice cup actually. Right, so yes, I'm just going to edit this. So what I will say is, let's just go back to this screen for a second. Why isn't that doing that? Right, what I will say is I will just to qualify and explain. I edit off paper at the end, so what you will see on the screen won't necessarily reflect what I'm reading. So obviously I display the text now. Oh God, except that's my Discord server. Sorry, I display the text now, but I won't. But I won't actually. It will stay on the wrong bit of the screen. Until I actually make an edit. Right, so anyway, part 4. So we're into part 4 of the book now. Let me just have a quick look at something. So the book, before I edited it, came to a total of 271,000 words. Why isn't that loading? Right, that's playing silly buggers. Let's close that down and try again. There we go. So up until this point, I've edited 145,000 out of the 271,000 words. So I've got about 126,000 to go. The chapter I'm doing today is about 5,000. But it'd be very nice. Oh, I'm just waffling now. Right, let's get on with it, Andrew. Richard. So yeah, so it's this is part 4. This is the biggest chunk of the book. So part 1 is about 6 chapters, part 2 is 10, part 3 is 10, part 4 is about 14, I think. Let's just work that out. 6 plus 10 plus 10 plus 14 plus 3 equals 43. So that's exactly right. And there's a prologue as well. Right. Anyway, part 4, Ragnarok, chapter 27, Coercion. David Sayers sat in front of the computer screen in his untidy office. There was a second desk perpendicular to the one upon which his computer rested, which was covered in disassembled electronic components. There was a circuit board with a magnifying glass above it, as well as a pair of tweezers and a soldering iron. Sayers was examining the image of a circuit on the screen in front of him. He magnified it, dragged a couple of icons into different locations, zoomed out a little so he could see the whole diagram, then simulated a signal being sent through the circuit board. The results on the output monitor at the bottom of the screen were blank. He shook his head ruefully. Sayers took a sip from the water flask next to the keyboard and ran his fingers through his dank hair. He needed a break from the electronics work, so he shuffled through the security feeds until the screen showed the small room that contained Daniel Huxley. He smiled. Danny was asleep on the bed. Every day for the month he'd been here, Clayton had ensured something was done to make his life more miserable. The duvet had been the first thing to be removed, leaving just a thin sheet. That was the next thing to go. Then the pillow. In the end, all that was left on the bed was the ancient, hard, sweat-stained mattress. Next, Clayton banned Danny from leaving the room. Up until that point, he'd been allowed occasional walks in the yard outside and regular bathroom breaks. The cell contained no toilet, so once Danny was wholly confined to his room, Clayton had left a bucket as well as a roll of toilet paper by the bed. Clayton's next tactic was to deliver food without cutlery so that Danny had to eat it with his hands. Every day after that, he'd been forced to remove an item of clothing till he was just wearing briefs that had not been allowed to change since he'd arrived. Soon, the toilet bucket was full. Danny poured as much waste as he could down the sink, which gave the bucket more room for solids. Eventually, he'd started urinating directly into the cracked and filthy basin. I'm nice to my characters, aren't I? Clayton walked into Sayers' room and saw that he was watching the feed of Danny. He's going to crack. Eventually he will tell us everything he knows about this so-called ambassador, he said, with a perverse grin. Sayers shook his head. What are you going to take away from him today? What are you going to take away from him today? Do I like the way that's worded? I don't like the way that's worded. Let's find a better way of wording. What are you going to deprive him of? Clayton sucked some air between his lips. There's not much else to take away. The taps in his sink will stop working, I think. Maybe the hot one today and the cold one tomorrow. Other way round. And there's a reason for that. He stood and looked at the image on the screen. The camera does night vision? Sayers nodded. Of course. Good, said Clayton with a nasty grimace. I think the light bulb will also be going soon. Then what? I can play with the temperature, said Clayton. I can't decide what you'd hate more, too hot or too cold. He's a big guy, said Sayers. I reckon he's used to being warm. Good point, murmured Clayton. I can turn the temperature down. It won't be life-threatening, but it won't be very comfortable. He has been here for almost a month, said Sayers, shaking his head wearily. You've got nothing out of him so far. He's close to breaking, repeated Clayton. I can sense it, and it's my turn to deliver his dinner today. Clayton only went into the room twice a week and never on the same days. The sight of him filled Danny with terror. His visit was always accompanied by some kind of pain. Sometimes he beat him, one time he burned him, on another occasion Clayton had stamped on Danny's hand until a finger broke. The mere sight of Clayton terrified Danny now. One of Clayton's visits. I think that's just using the word Clayton too many times. The man. That's probably better. Let me just do that again. Clayton went to him twice a week and never on the same days. The sight of him filled Danny with terror. His visit was always accompanied by some kind of pain. Sometimes he beat him, one time he burned him, and on another occasion Clayton had stamped on Danny's right hand until a finger broke. The mere sight of the man terrified Danny now. And then that last bit, one of Clayton's visits would get Danny to talk soon, is just reiterating what Clayton himself has already said, so we can lose it. What's it like out in the real world? Sayers asked. He always stayed inside the complex, so the insanity of the world outside only reached him anecdotally. There's going to be another demo in London later, said Clayton. People are protesting and writing about food shortages, petrol prices, you name it. The last repatriation flights came in today and the airlines have all been banned from making any other flights other than approved cargo runs. How much is petrol now? Asked Sayers out of curiosity. Cheapest I saw today was $5.50 a litre, replied Clayton. Sayers had been taking a sip from his water and always choked when he heard it. Christ, that's almost tripled in a month. Yeah. See, I've said yes, but that'd be a yeah. Yeah, said Clayton. And there's another 50p rise on Monday. £6? Exclaimed Sayers. Glad I don't drive. I think we are days away from martial law, said Clayton. Supermarkets are being robbed blind because everything is so expensive. There's a local group on Facebook called the Perth Delivery Watchers. Someone sits outside each supermarket and reports what they've had delivered. Someone has figured out that all the supermarket... Let's lose the has. Someone figured out that all the supermarket lorries have depot codes on the trailer. They know what kinds of goods come from each depot, so they can work out roughly what will be on board. As soon as it's announced that As soon as a fresh food wagon arrives, people are swarming over the supermarket like locusts. That's when the lorry makes it to the store, of course. Many delivery vehicles are being hijacked, especially those going to the more remote places in the islands. One supermarket is even thinking of closing its store in Ullapool. It's the only large supermarket in the town, but they're saying it's becoming too risky to get the goods up there. Is there still talk of a vote of no confidence in the government? Clayton smiled. The backbenchers are talking about it. They reckon something will be announced in the next couple of days. Clayton raised a fist. Mr. Tucker has people ready to fight every seat if a general election gets called. Carl Tucker, Prime Minister, said Sayers, with more than a hint of mockery. It could happen, retorted Clayton. Anyway, I'm going to visit Fat Boy. Got any good internet stuff for me first? Sayers grinned. There is one video that's been shared a few times. It's from Brazil. It's weird, but as soon as it was put up, loads of people started sharing similar stuff. Sayers sat down in front of his screen, closing the video feed from Danny's cell. He opened YouTube and selected his saved videos. He looked down at the list. I'm just going to tidy that up a little bit as well. He opened YouTube and selected his saved videos, looking down the list and opening. Let's just... Sayers grinned. There was one video that's been shared a few times. It's from Brazil. It's weird, but as soon as it was put up, loads of people started sharing similar stuff. Sayers sat down in front of his screen, closing the video feed from Danny's cell. He opened YouTube and selected his saved videos, looking down the list and opening the one he'd been looking for. He clicked play and the screen was filled with a picture of a bird resting on a thick branch. What is this shit? Asked Clayton. He's a nice man, isn't he? Just watch, said Sayers. The bird had a mainly green body and what looked like a blue cap on the top of its head. It was cleaning its feathers with its beak. There was a noise, and the bird seemed to try to fly away. It flapped its wings, but nothing happened. So what? Said Clayton. He turned to walk away, but Sayers called him back. Seriously, watch. Look at the feet. Hello, that's all right. I've kind of held off because I was going to talk about this radio comedy show that I quite like, but I've held off until you come back because I might be wrong, but I think you might like it as well. I don't know if you've heard of it. So it's an ex-police officer called Alfie Moore, and it's called It's a Fair Cop. And basically, it's done in front of a studio audience, and he tells people about, as a police officer, real situations he's been in, and during the show he'll say, right, so these are my options. If you were running the show, what would you do? And he gets a bit of feedback from the audience. I would do this, I would do that, I would do the other. Talks them through it. It is quite amusing and engaging the way he does it, and then tells you what he did. And the whole show's basically on that format. And it's amazing how much crap the police have to go through to basically do their job. So, for example, in episode 1, he's been informed that there is someone who's absolutely drunk that they reckon is about to get into his car. So and drive away from the pub. So he's given options like, do I just nick him now? Do I do I wait for him, see what he does, and all options like that. And what's interesting about it is he then talks you through why certain options he can't do. So, for example, if he stands and waits, say in the car park, watching this guy's car, that is technically surveillance. You have to have permission to do surveillance. So if you want to watch someone, you have to keep moving very slightly so it doesn't get classed as surveillance. Seriously, that's the kind of shit the police are up against. But he makes it really, really interesting and really, really funny. And this is true. It's absolutely true. So the show's on BBC Radio 4. It's in its 9th series now. I've been slowly listening to them all, but I absolutely recommend it. It's genuinely, it's genuinely eye-opening about the levels of crap that the police have to go through. And he was talking about, so he's he basically got put on a course to become a custody sergeant. And obviously, again, because I like the bill, I'm kind of fairly familiar with the custody sergeant thing, and it's quite interesting, but it's quite a responsible job. You forget quite how responsible it is, and nobody wants to do it. And he said, I wasn't sure whether I wanted to do it or not, so I basically went into the course and decided I was going to deliberately fail it. And he goes, the problem was, so had everybody else that was on the course. And he goes, I was the least worst and I scraped through. So honestly, I absolutely recommend it. Particularly, I'm talking to Tani here. I think you would find it amusing, and also what I like about it is he talks about stuff that went wrong. So there's a really interesting one about performance targets and how his station superintendent is like doing little PowerPoint presentations. So we need to do this, we need to do that, we need to do the other. And he gets a call about a break-in in a holiday park. So there's a holiday park and there's a caravan that's been broken into, and there's a family basically having a free holiday in there because they've broken into the caravan. So he goes and arrests the guy. Goes and arrests the guy, the husband, and the husband admits, I broke into the caravan. And there's this whole thing about the process that gets him, and they try to be a little bit nice about it because they're on holiday. If they convict them, if they put them in front of a certain kind of court, it has to be done locally, which means, just because he's on holiday, it means he'll have to keep coming back for hearings and all that kind of stuff, even though he lives miles away. So they're trying to do it in a way that didn't happen. And then at the end of the show, he goes back to sort of just have a quick word with the security guard that alerted him in the first place. And the security guy said, No, I never said he broke into it. The door was already broken. I just said there was people in the caravan. And because everything was so target-driven, everybody had assumed he'd broken into it. The guy hadn't wanted to be left from his kids and family in a strange town, so he'd just admitted to it, even though he didn't do it, to get through the process quicker, so that he could be back with his family, so they wouldn't be by themselves in a strange town. It was a total miscarriage of justice. And so this guy, Alfie Moore, the policeman, actually, once he found this out, he goes to his boss and says, oh my God, this has happened. And the guy goes, don't care now, it's in the books. It counts as a clear up. So it's really, sorry, I should probably... It's just a really interesting show. I really, really enjoy it. So it's on iPlayer now. There's a lot. In fact, I think it's on at the moment. I think they're in the middle of a series on Radio 4. Let me try and work out what day it's on. It's great. I've fallen in, as I say, I've listened to, they've done 9 series, and series, I mean, don't feel like you have to, but it's really interesting and informative. And as I say, this guy doesn't paint himself as a saint. He makes mistakes. He tells you things that go wrong. There was another one where somebody's mum phoned up and said, my son's taken an overdose and he wants to kill himself. Because he wants to kill himself. Help. So the ambulance service are already there, but the guy's refusing to get into the ambulance. And they have this kind of thing called pass the person. So at the moment, when initially the ambulance service were in charge, But the moment the police turned up and the guy was refusing to get into the ambulance, suddenly it was the police's problem. Ambulance service were allowed to leave. And the guy was basically saying, no, I don't want to talk about it. It's none of your business what I've done. Go away, go away. And it was fairly likely that he had taken the overdose and actually wanted to die. But legally, the police couldn't do anything about it. So what Alfie did was he sort of said, "Oh, I really need to use the loo. Is it all right if I use the loo?" And so he had a rummage in the bathroom to see if there are any pills or anything that might have been taken. Yeah. So he had a look in the bathroom, and there was nothing obvious, no tablets and stuff. And then he's walking back through the kitchen to where the lad and his mum are sitting in the living room, and he finds an empty packet of, blister pack of paracetamol in the bin. And he's like, the problem is he can't do anything because he hasn't got permission to search. So even though he now knows that this guy probably has taken an overdose, he can't do anything about it. Isn't that? And that, again, it's the kind of stuff the police are up against. And his solution could have cost him his job. He was so sure by the end that the guy had taken an overdose, but because the guy was saying, "Look, it's none of your business. I'm fine. I don't need help. I don't want to go to hospital." There was literally nothing the police could do. So do you know what the copper did? He punched him out, put him in the car, and took him to hospital. Could have cost him his job, but they got to him in time and saved him. And afterwards, the guy thanked him, which is why he didn't lose his job. But what a risk that was. But, It is bureaucracy gone mad. It just feels like common sense stuff. But no, honestly, so there are some heartwarming ones. This guy's had a long career, so he's... and there's another one, I could go on about it, I quite like it. There's one where they're talking about speeding. And he was saying there was this he was driving through a town, and this car shot past him at 40, and he pursued it, pulled up alongside it, and the guy held up a stethoscope in the window, and he thought, oh, okay, a doctor. The guy went, well, fair enough, and let him drive on, because he thought he was a doctor. And then a couple of days later, exactly the same guy at exactly the same time was speeding through the same bit of town. And so he pulls him over again, and the guy holds up a stethoscope again. And so the policeman held up some handcuffs. And he pulled over this one woman that was speeding, and she was like, "Oh, I'm a carer. I can't. I'm really sorry. I've got 9 points on my license. If you do me for this, I'm going to lose my job. I'm a carer. The people I'm looking after rely on me." And this was really interesting. So he then put it to the audience: "What would you do in this situation?" And most of the audience said, "No, we'd let her off. She's a carer. She hasn't hurt anybody this time." And he said, "Yeah, fair enough." He goes, "The problem was I'd just ticketed someone for doing less than her, for doing 35. How could I not ticket her?" So he did ticket her. She did lose her driving licence, and then a few days later he sees her driving, and he gets the car registration, manages to get her address, work out who she is. She wasn't a carer at all. She was a mobile hairdresser. So she'd lied to try and get his sympathy. I'll stop talking about it now. You can clearly tell I think it's a very engaging show. As I say, he has interaction with the audience. He constantly rips on the Met, because he's from Humberside Police. So he's up in Scunthorpe Way. And he's constantly ripping on the Met. But then what I like about it is, when he asks questions of the audience, somebody talk to someone, and they'll go, "Oh, we'll do this, I'll do that," and he goes, and what do you do?" And there's nurses and there's mental health workers, and every now and then there's a police officer in the audience, And he goes, and when they sound particularly harsh, you go, "Are you from the Met by any chance?" And he does rip on the Met quite a lot. But anyway, I'll stop talking about it now. It's great. I love it. It's a fair cop, BBC Radio 4. I have not been paid for this advert. Right. "Just watch," said Sayers. The bird had a mainly green body and what looked like a blue cap on the top of its head. It was cleaning its feathers with its beak. There was a noise and the bird seemed to try and fly away. It flapped his wings, but nothing happened. "So what?" said Clayton. He turned to walk away, but Sayers called him back. "Seriously, watch. Look at the feet." Yeah, I mean, I did. So, whilst I have had not an ideal 3 days at work. But when we finally got to Venice the night before last, I was actually in the mood to do some work. So I didn't do any signing off, but I did read through chapters 27, 20, 28 and 29. And yeah. And I don't know, well, I basically, what I'm going to try and do today is I'm going to try and get 27 signed off, which I'm doing now. And ideally, I'd like to get 28 and 29 signed off as well. Oh, I don't know if am I still on, because my TV screen has just frozen. Let's have a look to see if I can see if I'm still on. Oh, wrong button. Dropped frames, none. I am still on. Brilliant, thank you. Sorry, I always watch my live stream live, or I have it on in the background just to make sure everything's going okay. And it seemed to freeze. Cool. Yeah, so I got quite a lot of reading done that night because I was just in the mood. Wrong. Let's just get rid of that. So yeah, so by the end of tomorrow, I would like, and I don't care if I don't, because at the end of the day, it's a not, what's it? Thing, not a target. Anyway, I'd like to get to the end of chapter 29 by the end of tomorrow, signed off, which then only leaves me one chapter to have, well, not to have to do, but to finish this month before I hit my target, which would be great. So yeah, yeah, and Singapore, Sydney. So I'm on the long 9-day trip again. Goal, that's the way. It's a goal, not a target. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, if I can get 29 done by the end of tomorrow. Well, for a start, it's the 16th tomorrow, so I'm halfway through the month and I've done 90% of the writing target I set myself. And secondly, the Singapore Sydney run is really conducive to doing work. It's a decent amount of time down route. I can go and sit in coffee shops. We've got a printer at the hotel, and I can print directly from my computer. So I can, once I've signed a chapter off on the screen, I can then print it. They use proper A4 paper. It's not like America where you get this weirdly dimensioned stuff. And as does Australia. So if I need to print something off in Australia, they can print it off for me, and that's not quite as easy. I have to go to the concierge and email it to them, but it's still, they're always more than happy to do that. So yeah, I'm going to hopefully, by the time I come back from Singapore and Sydney, be ahead of my goal. And then what I want to try and do for the last few days, as well as any further writing. You've probably noticed, anybody who watches this or listens to my podcast knows, I always set myself goals every month. Some of them are writing, some of them are, I've got to stop doing that because of hay fever. I've got writing goals, and I've got, so I've set myself the target of preparing a submission package for Still Life. I've not done that. I'm getting very good now at doing the writing goals. I'm still bloody terrible at doing the submission stuff. So I think when I get back from Singapore and Sydney, I've got 5 days, and I'm not going to say I won't do any more work on Empress, but I think I have to get the submission package done for Still Life because I keep putting it off. And I also need to continue to submit English Hikikomori. I've got no live submissions for that at all. The other thing, actually, I'll talk to you about this in person when I see you in, well, it's a couple of weeks, isn't it? But I will see you on the Saturday after I get back from Singapore. I really do want to do a trip up to Sherwood Forest to try and get a photograph for the cover of Empress. And I don't know if that's something you fancy doing, but I was thinking something like a Monday would be a good day because I didn't realise the kids don't break up from school until the 23rd or so of June. So, sorry, of July. So I could go, we can go, whatever, but there won't be loads of kids running around if we do Monday. And the school holidays won't have started, so it just feels like quite a good time to think about doing it. I mean, I'll do it anyway, even if you don't want to or can't, but yeah, it might be a little day out or something. Yeah, so I want, so basically what I want is, well, have I got my copy of English Hikikomori lying about? He says, there's stuff everywhere, I need to do a tidy. Yes. So I want a photograph that's formatted somewhat like the cover of this. So I want a photograph that's kind of that size or that shape, with the main tree that I want as the cover on that half, but then the picture can bleed into the back cover as well, and so on. So yeah. Right. Anyway, on with this sign off. Seriously, watch. Look at the feet. Clayton looked down to where the bird's feet should have been on the branch. He was not sure, but there seemed to be a slight ripple around the feet of the terrified Should I say claw to remove the repetition of the word feet? Claws. Clayton looked down to where the bird's feet should have been on the branch. He was not sure, but there seemed to be a slight ripple around the claws of the terrified creature, and they seemed to have disappeared into the branch. Clayton smiled. "Does it die?" he asked, suddenly interested. "Just watch." The bird, with its feet appearing to be... I'm going to say claws again. Appearing to be embedded in the branch, flapped desperately. In fascination, Clayton walked over to the screen and watched as the bird suddenly seemed to be sucked into the branch. A moment later, there was no sign that it had ever been there. Clayton gave a delighted grin. "Ha!" he said. "What happened there?" "Not really sure," admitted Sayers. "I'd say it was fake, but there's loads of them doing the rounds online, all from the last week or so." He closed the window and looked through the list of recordings that he'd favourited. "I've got a rabbit somewhere." Sayers found the recording and played it. A rabbit was sniffing around the foot of a tree when its paw became stuck to the wood. It frantically pulled, but could not manage to break free. As with the previous video, there was a slight ripple in the surface of the wood, only this time the animal seemed to be drawn into it a little more slowly. It was a gradual process rather than the sudden gulp that had taken the wood nymph. "That's amazing," said Clayton. "And you said there's more of these?" "Not lots," admitted Sayers, "but there are some new ones every day. If the media have not picked up on it in the next couple of days, Mr. Tucker has asked me to give them a nudge." "Send it to my phone," said Clayton. "I might be able to use this." Sayers opened an email and copied and pasted the links from both videos into the document. There you go. Clayton pulled his phone from his pocket, refreshed his inbox a couple of times, then grinned. "Got it," he said. He opened the video of the rabbit and watched it play back on his screen. "There we go. Perfect. What are you intending to do?" "We know that his friend is the so-called ambassador to the trees. I wonder how he will react if I show him this." "Worth a try," said Sayers. "In it, though? Isn't it, though?" Clayton left the room. Sayers opened the video feed to Danny's room and watched. Danny lay on the grubby mattress. The light from the bare bulb hurt his eyes, so he spent most of his time with them closed. Initially, he would face away from the door because that way he got more rest. When lying on his back, he could see the intense brightness of the bulb through his eyelids. However, his torture had used this to sneak up on him twice now. He always wore a balaclava. All of the people who entered this room wore some kind of face covering, but this particular man frightened him because he had made a point of hurting Danny every time he visited. He could recognise him now by the sound of his breathing and the noise he made when he walked. Noises. Noises. There we go. Danny was not sure how long he'd been in prison for. The days and nights merged into one, and the cell had no windows. There was no discernible pattern to the visits from his tormentor. Sometimes he punched him. this particular tormentor. Oh no, he's the only one, the others just give him stuff. Sometimes he punched him. He had also forced Danny to put his hand on the light bulb on one occasion and used gloved fingers to hold it in place until Danny could smell his skin burning. The door opened suddenly. It opened outwards rather than inwards. Again, let's just the door opened suddenly, outwards rather than inwards. No, let's just... There was never light from the other side, so Danny had no idea what was out there. The man that terrified him walked in, his shoes making that familiar dragging sound. He had a tray that held a dog bowl containing food, which was hot, as Danny could see steam rising from the bowl. He could feel his heart quickening. Anything slightly different was usually not a good sign. The door was closed by someone on the outside, and the man rested the tray on the sink, hooking it under the taps to hold it in place. He stood in silence for a few moments, then removed his leather gloves slowly and deliberately. "I have something to show you, Danny," said the man. He looked at Danny and gave a smile through the balaclava. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a phone, which was not what Danny had expected. The man sat carefully down on the bed next to his prisoner and held up the screen. There was a video of a rabbit sniffing around the roots of a tree. "It's a rabbit," said Danny. He was terrified, and the sentence ended with a rising pitch. "Yes, it is," said Clayton. "I'm not trying to trick you. Watch the video." Danny's heart was beating quickly, but when he saw the slight ripple around the rabbit's paw as it tried to tug itself away from the tree, he gave a little gasp. Clayton smiled again. "That might be construed as a gasp of recognition, Danny. Have you seen this before?" Danny tried not to react, but he was aware that his face had gone red and he was starting to sweat. He tried not to react further when he saw the rabbit absorbed by the tree. "That wasn't interesting." I'm just going to see if there's another word for react that I could use just to replace, again, that slight repetition. Is Clayton smart enough to use the word acknowledge? No, let's change that to... That was interesting behaviour, said Clayton, putting the phone back into his jacket. A gasp of recognition followed by no reaction at all to a rabbit being sucked into a tree. I ask you again, have you ever seen anything like this? No, stammered Danny. Clayton exhaled. Wish I could believe you, Danny. I've been told that your friend Veronica undergoes a similar process when she communicates with her pagan deity. Your reaction tells me you've seen it. I'd like to know where and when. I've never seen anything like that before, said Danny. Clayton smiled. You're a shit liar. Tell me what you've seen and where you saw it. Again, I've just put a contraction in there that isn't in the text, but it should be, so I'm just going to change it. Tell me what you've seen and where you saw it. I can't tell you what I don't know. You are an idiot, said Clayton. You know the drill. I won't be asking again. I can't tell you what I don't know, repeated Danny. Of course you can't, said Clayton. He stood up, which made Danny flinch, but Clayton just walked away, moving over to the door. He carefully put on his gloves, then lifted the tray and stepped back towards Danny. He lifted the bowl from the tray. Don't need the from the tray. Kitchen told me to warn you that the dog bowl is very hot. I'm going to put the word dog in. The kitchen told me to warn you that the dog bowl is very hot. Danny watched with wide eyes as Clayton lifted it. He put his hands out, but Clayton shook his head and placed the bowl straight down onto Danny's legs. Danny screamed. The bowl was not merely hot, it had been in an oven. He was about to stand, but Clayton upended the bowl and poured the hot contents into his lap. Danny stood, and the bowl fell to the floor and smashed. Again, too many. Danny screamed. The bowl was not merely hot, it had been in an oven. He was about to stand, but Clayton upended the container. And poured the hot contents. Danny stood, and it fell to the floor and smashed. There were large red marks towards the top of his legs where it had rested on his skin. His lower stomach was also marked from where the scalding contents had spilt onto him. That was careless, said Clayton, ignoring Danny's screams of pain. He knelt and picked up the broken shards of the bowl and placed them onto the tray. You'd better run out under the cold tap quickly, he said, walking to the door and hitting it sharply with his fist. It opened, and Clayton backed out of the room. The door closed behind him. Danny lay sobbing for a few moments, then picked up his bucket, emptied the contents onto the floor, and held it under the cold tap. No water came out. In a panic, he tried the hot tap. The water started flowing, and for a few seconds it was blissfully cold. He quickly spilled the bucket to get rid of the remaining waste, tipped it down the sink, then tried to fill it again. The water that was coming out of the tap was warming up alarmingly quickly. He sat on the floor and tipped the dirty water over his lower chest and legs. It did almost nothing to soothe the pain. The water coming out of the tap was now warm rather than cold. He poured some more down himself, but it did not help. The water was now scalding. He screamed with pain, threw the bucket into the corner, and sat down heavily on the bed, crying. Sayers watched the video feed in fascination before Clayton stormed back into the room. That was a bit unwarranted, admonished. Sayers watched the video feed in fascination before Clayton stormed back into the room. Not before. As Clayton stormed back into the room. That was a bit unwarranted, admonished, sly grin on his face. Clayton ripped off the gloves and balaclava. The contents of the video were not a shock to him. He's seen that before. Sir shook his head. Whatever, he really hurt him this time. If he needs medical attention, he's not going to get it. If those burns get infected, he might get ill. You're not going to get anything from him if he dies. Clayton Ramsden says, I need to know what he knows, fat privileged prick. Privileged? Snap says, have you read his file? He's had a horrible family life. He got bullied when he was younger. Maybe we should try being nice to him. No fun. Sayers picked up the phone on his desk. Get the prisoner some first aid. He will need some ice and painkillers. Mr. Tucker needs to know what he knows. A few minutes later, a pair of masked men could be seen entering the room on the screen. Danny backed away, but gave it immediately when he saw the... That doesn't really mean anything. Who Marshman could be seen entering the room on the screen. Oh, I don't need to say on the screen. Could be seen entering the room. Danny backed away. The men ordered him to lie on the bed with his legs apart before proceeding to place the ice-filled towels on the tops of his legs and lower stomach. Sayers stood up. I don't want to see you doing anything that reckless again. I'll talk to him tomorrow. I will try being nice and see what I can get out of him. Boring, yawned Clayton. Don't go there again, snapped Sayers. I get that we have to do unpleasant things, but I do not join up to watch you torture someone. Clayton fixed Sayers with a steely grin. I heard you quite like it, he said, raising his eyebrows suggestively. Sayers shook his head, going slightly red. Don't do it again, he repeated. I'll talk to him in the morning, and I will get what you need out of him. What we need out of him. without threatening to send me in if he doesn't do as you ask. Didn't say that, snapped Sayers, but sometimes all you have to do is imply that something unpleasant will happen. He picked up the phone again. Hello, return Mr. Huxley's clothing and the bedding, restore the water, clean up the shit. Clayton shook his head. You're boring, Mr. Sayers. Tomorrow morning I will have the information you want, said Sayers. Please, go away. Clayton walked out of the room and slammed the door behind him. Sayers sat down. I don't think he's that angry. Shook his head. And opened up the screen containing the circuit diagram. Swearing softly to himself, he started examining it again. The next morning, Sayers walked through the facility until he came to the area where Danny was being kept. He surprised the member of staff who was on duty. That's just unnecessary. It's my turn to talk to the prisoner, said Sayers. Have you got something to cover your face? I don't need it, said Sayers. The guard looked surprised. You sure, Mr. Sayers? He asked. Quite sure, said Sayers. The guard put a mask over his face and led him into the dark corridor adjacent to the cells. He unlocked the door and pulled it open. Sayers walked in. Danny looked up at the man who had entered. But not in that way. Enter, what? Dan looked up at the man in the room and was rather startled to see his face. He knew this was not the man that hurt him. Sayers was the wrong build for one thing, and the eyes were wrong. Those eyes haunted his dreams. The door closed behind Sayers, who wrinkled his nose as he looked around the room. This was probably because it smelt like the inside of a public toilet. Danny had context. Male public toilets stink. Because we're animals. Danny had no idea if this man had come into the room before, but his hunch was that he'd never met him. Mr. Huxley, said Sayers. He indicated the bed, which had fresh sheets on it as well as clean duvet and pillows. May I sit? Danny looked curiously at him but nodded. Sayers sat gently down at the end of the bed and looked across at the prisoner. I've come to talk to you, said Sayers. Also, I wish to apologise for the excesses of my colleague. I witnessed what happened yesterday, he said, gesturing to the CCTV camera on the wall. I'm sorry that he went that far. It was me that told them to give you your clothes back as well as fresh sheets and to clean up the room. Danny looked down at the cheap blue tracksuit that he was wearing. They're not exactly my clothes, he said after a pause. Sayers nodded, but did not say anything. Danny waited, then spoke again. What do you want? I've got a sew. What do you want? I'm going to lose the sew. I want you to cooperate, said Sayers simply. And if I don't? My colleague is a sociopath, said Sayers. He is rapidly coming to the conclusion that we are not going to get anything from you. When he reaches that conclusion, you will be of no use to us. We cannot let you go. So the day he decides. My colleague's a sociopath, said Sayers. He's rapidly coming to the conclusion that we're not going to get anything from you. When he reaches that conclusion, you will be of no use to us. We cannot let you go. That's better. My colleague is a sociopath, said Sayers. He is rapidly coming to the conclusion that we are not going to get anything from you. When he reaches... Again, that's just... maybe realisation might be a better word in that context. Yeah. He's rapidly coming to the realisation that we're not going to get anything from you. When he reaches that conclusion, you will be of no use to us. No further use to us. You'll be of no further use to us. That will be. That. I've got the wrong word italicised, I think. Now. My colleague is a sociopath, said Sayers. "He is rapidly coming to the realisation that we are not going to get anything from you. When he reaches that conclusion, you will be of no further use to us. That will be the last day of your life." He watched Danny's face drain of colour. "I don't imagine it will be quick." He met Danny's gaze directly. "He will play with you first, Danny. He will make you suffer. I don't want to see that. All you have to do is tell us everything you know about Veronica Keene." Danny shook his head. "So you can kill her as well? Do you know where she is?" "No." "So how is giving us information going to kill her?" "You might be able to use it to find her." "Yes," it says, "we might. But are you willing to die to stop that?" "And I might add, quite horribly." Danny swallowed. "Let me try a different tack," it says. He pulled out a phone from the inner line of his jacket and punched in a passcode. The screen unlocked, and Sayers thumbed through a few photographs until he found the one he wanted. He held up the screen, showing Danny the picture. "Who is this?" Danny swallowed again, but said nothing. A tear rolled down his cheek. "Her name is Laura Cunningham," said Sayers. "She is your girlfriend." He swiped another picture, which is of Danny and Laura with their arms around each other. "She currently resides at Mendell House, a halls of residence for Mansfield University, Nottinghamshire." The room was not all that warm, but Sayers could see some nervous sweat on Danny's upper lip. "If you do not give me the information that I need, I'm going to call our mutual friend." He grabbed Danny's hand and twisted. "No, I'm not going to have him twisting the broken finger." "And examined, that's probably better." And examined the broken finger. Danny winced and pulled it away. "The one that did that to you. You will tell me everything you know about Veronica Keene now, or our mutual friend is going to pay Laura a visit. She won't survive it, but he will undoubtedly force himself on her first. He's a bit like that, I'm afraid." Danny squeezed his eyes shut and fresh tears emerged. "Save yourself. Save Laura from being tortured and murdered. Tell me what I need to know." Danny shook his head. I'm going to add a bit here. I'm not sure that would convince Danny, because I think maybe Sayers might have mentioned her before. So I'm just going to add. And I'm not going to describe what we see now. Sayers shook his head and opened another file on his phone. It appeared to be a still of Sayers holding a knife. Sayers hit the play icon and Danny watched the video in fascination. It clearly showed the man stabbing someone to death, someone who was, at least at the start of the video, screaming pitifully. Don't worry, it's not anyone you know, said Sayers. I'm going to leave the room now. That's better. I was a little bit unsure why Danny would suddenly give him the information. I'm going to leave the room now. But it very well could be. Sayers shook his head and had another file on his phone. It appeared to have a still of Sayers holding a knife. Sayers hit the play icon and Danny watched the video in fascination. It clearly showed the man stabbing someone to death. Someone was at least the start of the video, screaming pitifully. Don't worry, it's not anyone you know, said Sayers, but it very well could be. Do you think Laura would put up as good a fight as that? I'm going to leave the room now. You have until the door closes behind me to tell me what I need to know. He stood and walked slowly to the door and knocked on it. I'm done, he said. The door opened outwards and Sayers stepped forwards. He turned and faced Danny. Last chance, he said. Danny let out a sob. What do you want to know? That feels more likely, because I was just a bit worried that... yeah, I was just a little bit... I guess the stuff when he was threatening his girlfriend would probably do the trick. But... I think just showing him the video of Clayton clearly doing something unspeakable before. God, imagine being... Oh, mate, can you just film me doing something? Yeah, I'm just going to stab this bloke to death. Can you just film it? Thanks. Yeah, 1080p. Yeah. Oh, no, 4K if you can do it, yeah. Lovely. Right. Daniel said, what do you want to know? Clayton entered Sayers' office about half an hour later with an arrogant expression on his face. So where is this information he said you were going to get? Sayers was looking at some circuitry on his second desk under the lamp and magnifying glass. He gestured for Clayton to sit down, then turned to face him. Veronica Keene's parents live in Cheltenham. He handed Sayers a sheet of paper with some scruffy handwriting in it. That is the address. She has lived there since she was 10 years old. Her father is the headmaster at the local secondary school. That's the next address on the paper. Her mother works for an environmental sciences research company. Third address. Danny has known since they went to school together, and they went to university together in Mansfield before she vanished at the new year for about 3 months. Hours after they had... let me read that again. Third address. Danny has known since they went to school together, and they went to university... I'm just going to slightly reword that. Since school. Danny's known her since school. They went to university together in Mansfield before she vanished in the new year for about 3 months. Hours after they'd had sex for the first time, it turns out. It also turns out that she'd been communicating in some way with a tree during this time. He says that he saw her touch the tree, and also that he touched it and it briefly communicated with him. He says that he knows she spent 3 months literally inside the tree. The only other person that knew it was happening was an old dear called Ursula Baker. She lives in Sherwood Forest, very close to the tree that he says Veronica spoke to. Fourth address. Clayton smiled. I'd say the tree stuff was a load of old bollocks if it wasn't for those videos doing the rounds online. Sir smiled. He confirmed that. He says what happened to the rabbit is like what happened to Veronica. So, his friend the ambassador. Sayers smiled. I also finally understand what Mr. Tucker wants me to do with all of this. He pointed to the work that he was doing on the table before him. With a circuit board and that? Asked Clayton. Indeed, said Sayers. Let me show you something. Sayers led Clayton through a couple of hallways and corridors until they came to a large, thick metal door. Clayton looked vaguely impressed. His clearance did not give him access to this part of the facility, and as such, he'd never been here. I'm going to say before. Sayers swiped his card. on the door and then typed a long number into the keypad. Clayton grunted. That's more than 4 digits. 10, said Sayers with a smile. You can't be too careful. He pressed his palm onto a wall-mounted screen the size of a computer tablet. A line scrolled down the screen, which turned green. I'm going to just tracing the outline excuse me, tracing the sneeze again. Excuse me. 10, said Sayers with a smile. You can't be too careful. He pressed his palm into a wall-mounted screen the size of a computer tablet. A line scrolled down the screen, tracing the outline of his hand. He removed it, leaving a hand shape on the screen. Leaving the imprint of his hand, rather. On the display. A line scroll, let's do that again. "10," said Sayers with a smile. You can't be too careful. He pressed his palm onto a wall-mounted screen the size of a computer tablet. A line scrolled down the screen, tracing the outline of his hand. He removed it, leaving the imprint of his hand on the display. It turned green and flashed. A few moments later, there's a click as the enormous door unlocked. Let me put Sayers in there because we haven't mentioned his name. Sayers swung the door open and walked into the space beyond. It was a vast, domed room. The ceiling seemed to be made of several layers of thick canvas. Let's lose the several layers of thick canvas, although he could not see what was beyond that. A lighting gantry was mounted on the ceiling with a series of 10 lights that were pointing downwards, although they were dimmed. The top of the dome was at least 30 metres in height. Close to the door was a computer console. Sayers punched in a password and then spoke to the machine. "Computer, day mode," he said. I'm going to lose activate. "Computer, day mode," he said. The lights on the gantry started getting brighter, revealing an oak tree that dominated the space. Cables ran from the computer console to the tree, which all ended in metal spikes that were driven into the bark around the circumference of the trunk at approximately 2 metres in height. "What the fuck is this?" asked Clayton. "Miss Keene is literally an ambassador from the trees," said Sayers. "The insane new environmental policies do not come from research that has revealed a doomsday scenario, as the world governments are claiming. They are demands made by the trees themselves. They have a way of communicating directly with us through Miss Keene. We can only send our response back through her. This research is hopefully going to allow us to directly communicate with them, but on our terms." "Then why do we need her?" asked Clayton. He'd walked slowly up to the trunk of the tree and was looking at the spikes driven into it. "So we hold all the cards," said Sayers. "If this works, we can make our own demands back to them." Clayton was now looking at his feet. "I'm standing on soil." "Of course you are. We know that trees can communicate with each other through fungal strands called mycelia. This tree, although in real soil, has been cut off completely from the rest of them. We can test our communication process on it, and it cannot warn them if we make any headway. Once we know it works, if it ever works, we can then reconnect this tree to their collective and use our ambassador to make demands back to them." "And who gets to choose what that message will be?" asked Clayton. "Our next Prime Minister," said Sayers. "The soon-to-be Right Honourable Carl Tucker." Yay! Right, yeah. let's grammarialise. That took a bit longer than I thought, but then I've been sort of nattering as well, which is nice. I've been doing a big advert for a BBC show. Right, let me export to a Word document. Let me run this through Grammarly. I'm going to do the next chapter as well, because I think the next chapter, it's another one that hasn't got the main characters in, but it's quite short, but it is important. Right, so let me just go to Grammarly. Great British Tea Bar. Oh, yeah. No. What am I doing, Grammarly? You're on a roll. I'm doing all right. Yeah. As I say, I deliberately set myself quite a good, or a, what do you call it, generous target this month, because unusually I've only got pairs of days off. Usually I get 3 days off at least a couple of times a month between flights, and I find it very easy to be productive when I get that amount of time off. When I have only 2 days off, there's usually loads I need to do. I need to get my washing done. There's just stuff I need to do, and that extra third day makes such a difference. And every day off I've had this month has been 2. Occasionally they give us just 1, but that's I very rarely get that, and I don't like it. But yeah, so I deliberately set myself a relatively easy target this month, because I knew I wouldn't get loads done because of the amount of work I'm doing. But, you know, I'm going to hit my target easily, I would have thought. So I might as well just crack on. Yeah, I'm going to do the next chapter as well now. And that should only leave me 1 to do tomorrow, which means I'll be on chapter 29 out of the one. My target was 30. Right, let's... You may have a couple of icons into different locations. Let's say entire, might be a better word there. Magnifying drag icons into different locations, zoomed out to see the entire diet. Danny wasn't deliver food without cutlery, so Danny had to eat it with his hands, with his bare hands. Oh, that's good. That is good. Yeah, it always feels like progress when you finish the first one. Weirdly, the exercise that I did the other day at the writing thing, at the bookshop, because they were talking about how difficult it is to get started. I don't tend to have that problem, because the 2 things I know when I'm writing are where I start, where I finish. I just don't know the route necessarily to get from A to B. Whereas obviously with your story you have to know that. Yeah, well, that's yeah. I mean, I do. As I say, I'm so pleased I'm on the right edit model. I'll be interested to see how much I can get written when I seriously start working on. I knew what you meant. Don't worry. It'll be interesting to see how much I can actually get done when I seriously start working on the still life sequel. Because I found I was writing about 2 chapters a month when I was finishing this. But actually, I feel I can work quicker than that. Then it depends how much I'm working as well, doesn't it? I suppose. But I'm going to try and set myself a daily writing target in July when I get to the actual writing stage of 3,000 words a day, which is quite a lot, but it's possible if I know what I'm writing, because then that gives me time to edit as well. Uh, someone figured out. Someone figured out that all the supermarkets. Someone sits down. Someone figured out all the supermarkets. They know what kinds of goods come from which depot. So they work out. Let's lose the roughly. Oh, there we go. It's the only large supermarket. Fat Boy wants a. No, it's not his name. He opened YouTube. But a menacing body and a feathers. And and the top of its head. Beard. We seem to have. No, I'm going to leave that as it is actually. Residence. Okay. No, I'm quite happy with how that's worded. Let's lose the RO, yeah, that's fair. Make demands back to them. Right, so let me download that. That took a bit longer to do than normal, but that's fine. So let me just... Right then, let's paste this back into the original file. Format it appropriately. There we go. That's chapter 27. I am going to do 20. If chapter 28 is the relatively short one, I think it is, I am going to do it. Firstly, let me move chapter 27 into the edited. God, I've only got 16 to do now, I think. Only 15 to do if I do this one, is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, I'm 17. Sorry, but it will be 9 pages. Yeah, this is the one I thought it was. Lovely, I will do it. Just need to print it first. Print toner, double-sided. Why is that suddenly switched off? Okay, I'm actually going to take some paper with me upstairs because at some point I'm going to need to put new paper in the printer. I've finally got around to buying some, but it'd be annoying to have to go all the way upstairs to come all the way back downstairs. Should be that back. Right then, so I have in my hands chapter 28. Oops. Let's make the door open so it doesn't slam in the wind. That sounds counterintuitive, but I know what I'm... Oh, do you know what? Let's just leave that like that. No, because it'll just bang. Hang on, stay there. Yeah. Right. Oh, hang on. I can see a message, a big one. Let me just read it. So there is a new exhibition marking 100 anniversary. It's free but ticketed. You know, sold out. But so I'm going to get some for August. They go live. I do, but I don't have my August roster and won't have that until about the 5th or 6th of July. But yes, yeah. If you can wait that long to get the tickets, which is only 2 or 3 weeks. But yes, yeah, up for that. I know that's the problem I've got. If we'd known before, because I've only know I've definitely got July off. Well, hang on. The other possibility. Hang on, because I have a part-time week in September. So if you can do September, we can make that work, and I can give you definite dates that I'm free. Let me just check them on my phone. First week of September, I can do. So, say Monday the 1st of September is a definite one I could do. Yeah, it's the problem with my job. It's not like I know I've got certain days. It's not like I have the same day off every week, which is just makes organising things a lot more complicated. Right, but anyway, that's my counter offer. Can't guarantee August, but can guarantee September. Chapter 28, Confidence. Duncan Ross stepped down the stairs from the pub garden and looked woozily around him. He'd managed once again to spend the whole evening sitting in a small corner of the castle tavern. Almost nobody had spoken to him. I put talked. I'm going to put spoken. Almost nobody had spoken to him, apart from a brief conversation with the bar staff. The only interaction he'd managed all evening was when one drunken man had walked into his table and almost knocked his pint over. Yeah, because that's right at the beginning of my 2 weeks off, and at some point I'm going to want to go away, but it won't be on the 1st. So closer to the beginning of that week would be better for me, because I do want to go away, but it won't be on the 1st or 2nd. So yeah, if you want to do 1st, 2nd or 3rd or something like that, yeah, cool. If you want to. Even then, the only words being uttered to him were a slurred, "Sorry, pal." He stood at the rear of the establishment. I don't know why there's a now in there. And looked around him. The imposing facade of Inverness Castle was over to his right. Just remind me closer to the time before you book the tickets, please, just to make sure that nothing else has come up. It probably won't have done, but just so you don't book them and I go, I can't do that now. I can't imagine that'd be the... Now, do you know what? I'll put it in my diary now, then that won't happen. Bear with me. Because obviously you've got to book leave to do it, so you don't want me going in the last minute. Oh, I can't do it now, so I will chuck it in the diary, then I won't forget. What's it called? Okay, that is in my diary. When do things open for you to try and get? I thought it was this month, but because they've made summer 1 month longer, it's actually next month. I think so. Yeah. So normally it's the beginning of June, but now now they've made summer a month longer. I'm assuming the reason, and I have checked, it isn't open yet. I'm assuming the reason that it hasn't opened yet is because we have an extra month of summer, so they'll open the window a month later. But it's definitely not open yet. Because I checked it the other day. Because there's a friend of mine who's rubbish at booking, and they've asked me to remind them when the window is open. So I'm checking every couple of days, and as soon as it's open, I'm going to let them know. And obviously, I shall try and bid for something that gives me the Friday off as well. Right. He stood at the rear of the establishment and looked around him. The imposing facade of Inverness Castle was over to his right, and the strip of parkland where Carruthers had, I'm going to say ambushed rather than jumped. had ambushed him was dead ahead. He took some breaths of the cold air. It was almost 11 o'clock, and it had been chilly all day. The trees in the park were missing all of their leaves, although he'd seen on the news that oxygen levels around the world were starting to recover from would you say it's an historic low, isn't it? An historic low. In the last few days, 2 cities in Peru had seen a large increase in deaths from suffocation. The town that was believed to be at the highest altitude of any human settlement on the planet, La Rinconada in the Peruvian Andes, had been evacuated. Oh, you're going to start all that shit today, phone? Please don't, or I'm just going to turn you off. Then, as slowly and mysteriously as it started, the oxygen of the planet had returned to normal levels. The trees in the country. I'm just going to put trees. Northern. Trees in Northern started to grow leaves again. In June, it was believed that the woods and forests would start to look normal within the next few weeks. It was the only thing that was normal. The price of everything had rocketed. Worldwide inflation was at a record high. Ross did not own a car, so the price of fuel had not impacted him at all, but everything else had. Food costs were spiralling. Supermarkets were crawling with security staff to make sure that people paid. Many places had started to put security checks on all meat, poultry and even cheese, and the beers that he had greedily swallowed tonight cost him almost twice as much as they had a month ago. It seemed that every time he ordered a pint, the bar staff were apologising that it was more expensive. He may have imagined it, and there's 2 spaces when there should be one, but he could have sworn that his second pint tonight was more expensive than the first, although the man behind the bar denied this. The pub had been quieter than normal. Friday nights were usually so busy that a stranger ended up sitting on the spare stool at his lone table, despite his unfriendly glare. Hello, Angel Faye, how are you? Hope everything's okay. Pub been quieter than normal. Friday nights were unusually so busy that a stranger ended up sitting on the spare stool at his lone table, despite his unfriendly glare. Sometimes they would even talk to him. Everyone had better make the most of the basic freedom of being able to leave their houses and meet people, Ross reflected. The consensus was that it would not be long before a curfew was imposed. Oh dear. Yeah, I'm not going to talk too much, Angel, about everything that's going on sort of at home with you, because I don't know what to say. But if you want to, feel free to. Yeah, it's a tricky conversation to start, so I won't initiate it. But if you want to, you absolutely can. Okay. No, fair enough. He looked up and down the street. A month ago, Crothers had telephoned him to explain that he might be contacted by someone who needed help. Crothers had described the person as non-binary, whatever the hell that meant, with feminine looks. They were called Marianne Castillo, and all that Crothers knew, apart from a brief description, was that he had to say they and them instead of she and her, which made no sense to him. Crothers had said that this person would seek him out at the Castle Tavern, so every time he went there, which was less frequently thanks to the price of everything, he was a little on edge until the end of the night. He'd even considered changing the pub that he drank in, but Crothers always paid him well. Tracking down Mackenzie last month had earned him a couple of grand once Crothers had coughed up, so Ross would do what he needed to do. He would take in this Marianne Castillo, and when Crothers called, which was usually once a week, he would tell him why that they damn it, was safe. He looked at the empty metal barrels in a stack behind him at the rear of the pub and was about to walk away when he heard movement. Quickening his pace just in case it was trouble, he heard someone step out from the barrels. Deliberately not looking, he considered crossing the road. "Hello, are you Duncan Ross?" Ross stopped suddenly as though someone had tugged on a rope that was tied to his middle. He turned slowly, his heart racing. Before him was what looked like a skinny girl. Her hair was tied in a ponytail and she wore tight jeans and a hooded top, which was down. From the limited look he had of her features, she had a pretty face and intelligent eyes. Her skin was, as far as you could tell under the street lights, an olive colour. Olive colour? Yeah. This had to be the person he was supposed to be keeping an eye out for. I might be, he said slowly. Are you Marianne? Person looked relieved. Yes. I believe we have a mutual friend. Ross shook his head. He's not a friend. What we have is a mutual pain in the arse. Ross shook his head. Oh, no, sorry, I've just read that. The girl looked around her as though worried that she might be being observed or followed. Tell Carruthers I'm here. I'll find you when you're here next. He doesn't phone me every day, stated Ross. The nervous figure in front of him nodded. I will tell him... I will let him know you're here next time he calls. It's usually once a week, but not always on the same day. Why don't you come back with me? You can be there when he calls. It should only be a couple of days. He tried to smile reassuring. I'm going to read that again. He doesn't phone me every day, stated Ross. The nervous figure in front of him nodded. Right, that's why that's messy. I just need to put a couple of contractions in so it's like the way people would actually speak. He doesn't phone me every day, stated Ross. The nervous figure in front of him nodded. I'll let him know you're here next time he calls. It's usually once a week, but not always on the same day. Why don't you come back with me? You can be there when he calls. It should only be a couple of days. I might put it might only be a couple of days. Might only be a couple of days. He tried to smile reassuringly, but it ended up resembling a cartoon vulture grinning at a rabbit. She shook her head. I'm safe for now. When he calls, agree where and when he will collect me. Make sure it's at least 2 days away. Does he call you in the evenings? Aye, said Ross, when I get home from the pub. So the day after he calls, come here. I will watch out for you. Aye, lass, said Ross. Are you sure you don't want to come back to mine? I have a nice wee house and a comfortable spare bed. Neither were true. The house was small, but thanks to years of neglect and lack of any real attempts to clean, it could not honestly be described as nice. And his spare bed was a mattress... I'm going to put on the floor. Let me do this again. Ah, lass, said Ross. Are you sure you don't want to come back to mine? I have a nice wee house and a comfortable spare bed. Neither were true. The house was small, but thanks to years of neglect and lack of any real attempts to clean, it could not honestly be described as nice. And his spare bed was a mattress that his mother had bought before he was born. In fact, she had died on it. Oh dear. The girl appeared to consider for a moment. She looked on the edge of tears, which made all sorts of scenarios play inside Ross's mind. He could comfort her, maybe give her a few drinks. Maybe a lot of drinks, until she fell asleep. He tried to smile reassuringly. Are you safe where you are now? The figure shrugged. I think so. Who knows? Well, the offer is there, lass. Maybe once you've spoken to Carruthers. OK. She wasn't coming, he realised with a pang of disappointment. Well, I will do as you ask. The night after he calls me, I'll see you here. He paused and decided to give it one last shot. Carruthers told me that there might be some unpleasant people after you. Are you sure you don't want to come back? Safety in numbers and all that. The figure opposite him smiled. Even though it was a sad smile, it lit up their face. I think I'll be safer where I am. Ross nodded. Aye, fair enough. Stay safe. He pulled a dirty pack of business cards from his pocket and handed her one. This is my phone number. If you need anything, call me. The figure took the card and examined it. IT solution, she said. Any IT problems and we can solve it for you, no questions asked. There's an email address and a mobile phone number at the bottom. The figure slipped the card back into the pocket of her jeans. Thank you, she said. I hope to see you soon. She took another look around her, then walked quickly away from him. Bye then, said Ross to himself, and rubbed his sweaty hands together before heading towards his house. Derek Cockrell Wright sat at the desk of his department office, rifling through sheets of paper. He was tired, it was almost midnight, and he had a large pile of reading still to do. The committee of backbenchers were holding an extraordinary meeting this evening, and the rumour mill suggested they were seriously thinking about passing a motion of no confidence in the government. Even with their reasonable majority, if the backbenchers called it, the opposition would support it, and then there would be a general election. Who knew what would happen then? Cockerell Wright drained his cup of cold coffee and decided to go and pour himself another. He suspected that the Prime Minister would be doing something similar. Invoking the Civil Contingencies Act 2 weeks ago had made things a lot simpler. Made many things. The government invoking the Civil Contingencies Act 2 weeks previously had made many things a lot simpler. The piece of work that Cockerell Wright was working on now was something that he knew that he would never be able to get through Parliament under normal circumstances. It was in order to close down every airline, with the exception of a couple that had larger aircraft that could be refitted for cargo, and even then they would only be permitted to retain a fraction of their fleet. The value of the hardware that they were being forced to junk was eye-watering. One long-haul aircraft carried a price tag of over $300 million, and one of the airlines he was dealing with had over 150 of them. He also had to arrange a visit for the ambassador, Veronica Arden. She would not just accept his word that things were in motion, she wanted to see proof. Walking around Heathrow Airport with hundreds of jets sitting on the tarmac doing nothing ought to count. Cockerell Wright stepped through the large oak door and into the adjacent office, the used coffee mug in his hands. He had asked his secretary to arrange to have a coffee machine put somewhere in the vicinity, thanks to the large number of late nights that he was starting to pull. It was due to arrive. It was due to arrive later in the week, and so in the meantime she'd found a kettle and set up a little tea and coffee station on top of one of the filing cabinets. The kettle was full, and she'd left him another jug for a jug. And she left him a jug of water in case it needed topping up. He'd just turned on the kettle and put some dried coffee granules, milk and sugar into the mug. He could not remember the last time he'd made himself coffee this way, and the first one had been over-strong and rather unpleasant. He'd used half the amount of dried coffee this time, so he reckoned. Let's just lose that. He'd just turned on the kettle and put some. He could not remember the last time he made himself coffee this way, and the first one had been over-strong and rather unpleasant. He had used half of the amount of dry coffee this time. He stood waiting for the water to boil when the telephone in his office started to ring. Olivia had transferred the incoming calls, so they went straight to the phone on his desk. Either that or someone was calling his direct line, although there were not all that many people who had the number. Cursing, he dashed back into his office, almost tripping in his haste, and picked up the phone. There was a brief pause. Then, "I have the Prime Minister for you." A tired voice came onto the line. "Derek?" She sounded exhausted. The Minister thought to himself. "Yes, ma'am. How did it go?" She paused. "I finished addressing the 1922 committee 10 minutes ago. They also let a couple of other people speak. I shouldn't have..." Hang on, I'm just going to... She paused. "I finished addressing the 1922 committee 10 minutes ago. Then a couple of other people spoke. I shouldn't have stayed to listen." She sounded defeated. Which was unlike, not like. It was unlike her. "Such as whom?" he prompted. "Simon Warwick, MP for Crawley." A large number of his constituents work either at or in support services for Gatwick Airport. He said that after the vote tonight he was going to resign his whip. And go where? Asked Cockerell Wright. He had a horrible feeling that he already knew what she was about to say. Over to Carl Tucker. Now they're an officially recognised political party, he's going to join them. He's going to be the Red Victor Party's first Member of Parliament. When will the news break? I don't know, she said. I was going to stay in the office and listen to the result of the 1922 committee vote, but honestly, Derek, I think it's a foregone conclusion. They will table the vote of no confidence tomorrow if they can get the Speaker to agree. They will table the vote of no confidence in the House. In the House. Tomorrow, if they can get the Speaker to agree. Cockerell Wright frowned. And he will agree, won't he? He could almost hear the Prime Minister glaring at the ceiling. Almost certainly. The vote will therefore... Probably. I'll put probably instead of therefore. The vote will probably be scheduled for Tuesday. That's better. Almost certainly the vote will probably be scheduled for Tuesday. And then what? Does the government resign or do we call a general election? I need some advice, said the Prime Minister. If we resign, the opposition will have to form a minority government with the help of any party that is willing to work with them. It'll be a fiasco and there will end up being a general election soon enough anyway. With everything that's going on, I think the less uncertainty the better. Also, anybody saddled with having to deliver what we have to deliver is as monumentally screwed as we are right now. You don't think the Red Victors will be able to get their act together in order to win a significant number of seats? The Prime Minister seemed to be thinking, it's inevitable that they will get some. But enough to form a government? No. I hope you're right. It's a massive risk. Then it's better to have a general election now rather than risk one down the line when they've had more time to get their act together. Cockerell Wright nodded. Yes, I suppose that makes sense. There is one other thing, Derek. There is no point me fighting the election. Whilst the party goes through the process of choosing a successor, you will take over. Cockerell Wright froze. You mean act as Prime Minister? For the length of the election campaign, yes. It'll be up to you to choose to run as party leader beyond that. I have never had any aspirations in that direction, Prime Minister. That is a direct quote from an episode of Yes Minister. In fact, it's the final episode of Yes Minister where the Prime Minister resigns and suddenly there's a scrabble to be the new Prime Minister. Now, we know that the main character, Jim Hacker, becomes it. But there's a bit where basically whenever somebody who obviously wants to be Prime Minister, it's hinted, why don't you run? They always say, oh, I've never had any aspirations in that direction. So that's a deliberate kind of little Yes Minister quote. I love that show. I've never had any aspirations in that direction, Prime Minister. She gave a tired laugh. They all bloody say that. I've already drafted my resignation letter, Derek. I'll be sending a courier over to you tonight with a copy of it and a cover note that says it only applies if the government loses the confidence motion. Cockerell Wright took a deep breath. I'm not sure how I feel about all of this, he confessed. No, I'm sure you don't, was the reply. Had there been a hint of cold mirth in her voice? He was not sure. I'm going home tonight, talking things over with my husband. I will listen to the radio on the way. That's a long old drive, said Cockerell Wright. Needs to be done, said the Prime Minister. Call me if you need anything. My car has just arrived. The Prime Minister closed her red boxes and arranged for them to be carried to the car in the Westminster courtyard close to her office. She looked around it wistfully and wondered how long it would be before she had to give it up. At the rate things were going, it may even be as soon as the day after tomorrow. She said goodbye to a permanent secretary who walked her to her car. He said few words, there was little he could say. He opened the back door of the car and she stepped in. It accelerated gently away through the gates and the security checkpoint, and onto the road. I'm going to put it out onto the road. Out onto the road. The Prime Minister opened the fridge in the back of the black vehicle and took out a bottle of mineral water, which she drained in almost one gulp. She pressed the button and the divider between her and her driver came down. Can you put the radio on? 5 Live. Yes, Mum, said the driver. She closed the blind and started listening to the live phone-in. Most of it was about the events happening right now in the committee room. Everyone assumed that she was going to lose, and the backbenchers were going to vote to table a no-confidence motion. The vote had happened, from what they were saying on the radio. They were just checking the count. The presenters were teasing the listeners with the fact they would shortly be over to the committee room for the live results. It must be almost there, said one. Dame Gordon has entered the room with her entourage, and is making her way up to the microphone at the front. She's carrying the piece of paper that undoubtedly contains the result of the ballot that everyone in the country wants to know the result of. Most of all, the Prime Minister, who has declined to appear the result in person and is believed to be in her office, almost certainly listening with the same rapt attention that we all are. The Prime Minister shook her head and continued to listen. And Dame Gordon is about to speak, said the presenter. There was silence for a few seconds, then a noticeable change in the audio quality as the feed switched from the studio to inside the committee room. Good evening, colleagues, said Dame Gordon. She had a deep soaker's voice and seemed to rasp into the microphone rather than speak. I'm not going to attempt to do that because it'll hurt my throat. I would like to thank the officers of the 1922 committee for their help. She was interrupted by spasmodic applause and some cries of "Hear, hear!" "Especially my assistant returning officers," said Dame Gordon, who then proceeded to name them. Of course she did, thought the Prime Minister herself. It was probably the only time anyone was remotely interested in anything the old hag had to say. The result of the... I made her up, by the way. Dame Gordon doesn't exist. I'm not being horrible. The result of the ballot held this evening is as follows. The number of votes cast in favour of holding a no-confidence motion in the government is 198. The number of votes cast against holding a vote of... Oh, hang on. The number of votes cast in favour of holding a vote of no confidence in government is 198. All right. The number of votes cast against holding a vote of no confidence in the government is 142. There are 331 people eligible to vote. As a result, the 1922 committee has voted overwhelmingly in favour of this motion. There's a sun stunts in the committee room as well as in the studio. One of the presenters was quick to fill the dead air. That must be the first time a government with a working majority has ever voted to effectively end their time in power. If all of the 189 Conservatives that voted this way tonight back the motion when it's put to the House, and assuming all the opposition MPs back it too, there will be approximately 500 members of Parliament voting against the government. The Prime Minister shook her head and a tear escaped from her eye. She pulled out a tissue and dried her face with it quickly before pressing the button and opening the divider. Please turn it off now, she said. Before waiting for a response, she raised the divider again. A few moments later, her mobile phone started to ring. It was Derek Cockerell Wright. She thought about rejecting the call, but just as she was about to hit the red button, changed her mind and answered. Yes, Derek. I just wanted to check to see that you were okay. She shook her head. Of course I'm not okay. What a stupid question. I'm going to lose that comma because it doesn't need to be there. Of course I'm not okay. What a stupid question. Cockerell paused. Sorry. Is there anything I can do? The Prime Minister closed her eyes. This was no doubt going to be the first of many such calls this evening. I will talk to everyone tomorrow, Derek. Please can you field calls for me until then? Of course, Prime. She did not allow him to complete his sentence before ending the call. She rattled off a quick test message to her husband to say what time she was due to arrive at home, and without waiting for a response, powered the phone down before flinging it unceremoniously to the floor. She looked out of the window and could see that the car was already on the motorway. She dropped the divider again. Is there a drive-through coffee place anywhere near here? The driver nodded. Services after the next junction, madam, he said. Stop there, please. A few miles later, the car pulled into a service station. The driver... I'm just going to reword that. The driver parked in the empty lane outside the coffee shop and bought the drink that the Prime Minister had asked for. He pulled over to an empty parking spot before knocking on the window. Stopped. The driver stopped in the empty lane outside the coffee shop and bought the ring as well. He pulled over into an empty car into a parking spot. He then... God, what a messy sentence that was. Right. A few miles later, the car pulled into a service station. The driver stopped in the empty lane outside the coffee shop and bought the drink the Prime Minister had asked for. Let's lose that. A few miles later, the car pulled into a service station. The driver stopped in the empty lane outside the coffee shop and bought the drink the Prime Minister had asked for. He then pulled over into a parking spot. Before knocking on the window, the Prime Minister lowered the blind and gratefully took the paper cut from him. "Thank you, Marshal," she said. "My name's not Marshal," said the man. The Prime Minister smiled. "No? What is it then?" She looked up to see that her driver was pointing a gun directly at her, with a silencer screwed onto the end. "It's Woods," he said, with a grim smile. Before she could respond, he pulled the trigger twice, killing her instantly with 2 bullets to the chest. Woods turned off the lights in the passenger compartment of the car, closed the divider again, and then drove towards the exit of the services and back onto the motorway. Did you see that coming? Yep, he's killed the Prime Minister. Lovely man. Right. This is why I won't name the Prime Minister, because if you look at the time the book is said, it's clearly meant to be Theresa May, but I think it's quite tasteless to show the death of an actual politician in a piece of writing. So I haven't stated who it is. So if you look at the time, it probably would be Theresa May, who was Prime Minister when this happened. And I've given her something to think about other than Brexit. Isn't that nice of me? Yeah. So let's just export that. Oh, I've got 6 people in. Hello. Oh. Shall I do some more? No, I don't know. I've been going 2 hours and I haven't eaten yet, so I might have to stop. But that only leaves me like the one chapter 29 to do tomorrow. Maybe I'll have a whiz through chapter 29 on the screen one more time. Okay, so let me let me finish this first, run it through Grammarly before I decide exactly what I'm going to do later. %90 overall score, okay. I'll just read that back. House was small, thanks to the years of neglect and lack of any attempts to clean it. It could not be described as nice. Yeah, I'll accept that recommendation. Actually, yes, I'm going to do that as well. I'm going to reword that. You mean become acting Prime Minister? Okay, I'll go with that. Right, so what does that leave me overall score once I've done the little bits of work? 91%. Again, I shall have that. So download it. minimise that, open that. Okay. Right, so 28. Yay! So I've only got 2 chapters now to sign off by the end of the month to hit my target. Woohoo! I think chapter 29 is quite a long one, so I don't know if I am going to do it now, to be honest. Oh, it's called Dead Air. So that's one where they turn television off. So that's... so I've got 15 chapters left. Is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 chapters left. Wow. Let's have a quick look at chapter 29. Dead Air. Long one. Shall I read through it? I'm not sure I'm in the mood. I'm a bit tired. Didn't sleep very well last night. I did this because I was just determined to get something done. You know, I've signed off 2 chapters. As much as there's a side of me that wants to carry on now, it is for the sake of it. I'm feeling a bit tired and I haven't had anything to eat. So I think I'm going to call that a day today. Thank you to everybody who's interacted. So today, particularly Bow Street Society and Angel Fate 87. My plan is to be back tomorrow, because I definitely want to get chapter 29 signed off tomorrow, which just puts me in such a good place, considering I want to be at the end of... I'd set myself a target being the end of chapter 30 by the end of the month. I'll be at the end of chapter 29 by tomorrow, hopefully. Which is great. And I think, as well as trying to get the package put together for Still Life, the submission package, I should be able to get a bit more done, which then means the knock-on effect on that means I won't have to spend all of July editing Empress. It means I might actually be able to start working on self-portrait. So that's great. I have got, how many people? I've got 4 people watching me. If I had a few more than that, I would probably raid out, but I'm gonna leave it for now. So thank you everyone for watching. I'll be back tomorrow, probably earlier than today. It'll probably be sort of 9 in the morning-ish maybe. But set your notifications and then you'll know. Cheers. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll be back. Bye. Sorry, watching as well. Oh, should I record the podcast now? No. Yeah. See you. Take care. I won't record the podcast now. I shall record it later. So I might have done a bit more later. Who knows? Thank you guys. Bye-bye.